The roses in my garden were bleeding, not literally, of course, but their crimson petals, heavy with morning dew, seemed to weep as I knelt among them, pruning shears trembling in my hands. For 30 years, these roses had been my sanctuary, their thorns a reminder that beauty could bite. I was tending to them that Tuesday morning in March, the air thick with the scent of spring and something else, something metallic, like the edge of a storm. That's when I heard it. The crunch of gravel under tires, a sound that used to fill me with joy, but now sent a chill down my spine. I stood, brushing dirt from my apron, and watched as 3 cars pulled into my driveway, one after another, like a procession of judgment. Sarah's silver BMW gleamed under the sun, pristine as her lawyerly composure. Michael's black truck followed, its engine growling with the same restless energy as its owner. And then Jessica's red convertible, flashy and impatient, screeched to a halt. My children, my 3 successful, beautiful children. It was rare for them to visit together, rarer still for them to arrive unannounced. My heart fluttered with a fragile hope, but deep down, I knew. I knew something was wrong. "Mom!" Sarah called, her voice slicing through the morning calm, artificially bright, the tone she used when she wanted something. "We need to talk." I wiped my hands, forcing a smile. "Come in, dears. It's been too long." They followed me into the house, the home I'd built brick by brick with their father before he vanished into the ether of his own selfishness. The living room was a museum of our lives. Lace curtains I'd sewn myself, photos of birthdays and graduations lining the walls, the piano where I'd played lullabies to soothe their childhood fears. But as they sat, their faces tight with purpose, I felt the weight of something unspoken, something final. Sarah, 52, crossed her legs, her tailored suit as sharp as her ambition. She was a real estate attorney, always in control, always calculating. Michael, 48, shifted in his chair, his calloused hands betraying the years he'd spent building his auto repair empire. Jessica, the youngest at 45, checked her smartwatch, her MBA from Northwestern a badge she wore like armor. They were my pride, my sacrifice, my everything. And yet, as I looked at them, I saw strangers. "Mom," Sarah began, her voice smooth as polished stone, "we've been talking, and we think it's time we address your living situation." The words landed like a blade, cold and precise. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face neutral. "My living situation. I'm perfectly fine here, Sarah. This house has been my home for 45 years. Michael cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. "That's just it, Mom. You're 73. What if something happens? What if you fall? We all live at least an hour away, more during rush hour." Jessica leaned forward, her red lipstick a stark contrast to her pale face. "We can't keep worrying about you being alone." I studied them. These children I'd raised on my own after their father walked out. Sarah, whose law school tuition I'd paid for by working double shifts at the textile factory. Michael, whose first auto shop I'd funded by draining my savings. Jessica, whose lavish wedding I'd covered because her father wouldn't contribute a dime. I'd given them everything, and now they sat here, plotting to take the last thing I had. My independence. "I see," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And what exactly are you suggesting?" Sarah pulled out a glossy brochure, her movements deliberate, like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "We've found this wonderful assisted living facility, Sunny Meadows. It's only 20 minutes from my house, and they have amazing amenities." She handed me the brochure, and my fingers trembled as I took it. The cover screamed active senior living community in garish yellow letters, accompanied by images of smiling elderly people playing bingo and eating in a sterile dining hall. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat, but swallowed it. People my own age to socialize with, I repeated, my voice flat. Because the three of you are too busy to visit your mother. Sarah's face flushed. That's not fair, Mom. We visit when we can. When was the last time? I asked, my gaze pinning each of them. When was the last time any of you came here just to spend time with me, not because you needed something or wanted to check some duty off your list? Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. They couldn't answer because they couldn't remember. Michael shifted again, his discomfort palpable. Look, Mom, we love you. That's why we want you somewhere safe, somewhere you'll be taken care of properly. Properly, I echoed, the word tasting like ash. Because I haven't taken care of myself properly for 7 decades. That's not what we mean, Sarah said, her lawyer's training kicking in, all smooth deflection. We just think this would be better for everyone. You'd have activities, meals provided, medical care on site. And what about this house? I asked, gesturing to the room that held every milestone of their lives. The house your father and I built together? The house where you grew up? Jessica perked up, her eyes glinting with opportunity. Actually, that works out perfectly. Sarah could list it for sale. The market's really good right now. We could get a great price, and that money could cover the costs of Sunny Meadows. I stared at her, my youngest, my dreamer, now calculating the price of my life like it was just another financial transaction. They wanted to sell my home, the one place that still held me together, to fund the prison they were sentencing me to. My hands clenched in my lap, but I kept my voice steady. And I suppose you've already decided this, all three of you, without consulting me. Mom, please don't be dramatic, Sarah said, her tone patronizing. We're all adults here. We can discuss this rationally. Rationally, I repeated, the word a bitter mockery. Like how rationally you discussed it behind my back. The afternoon wore on, their arguments growing more insistent. They'd already put a deposit down at Sunny Meadows. They'd scheduled appointments for me to meet the director. They'd planned my future without a single thought to what I wanted. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the room, I felt something inside me fracture. Not my love for them, that was too stubborn to break, but my trust. My faith in the children I'd raised to be kind, to be thoughtful, to be family. Fine, I said at last, my voice a ghost of itself. If this is what you've decided, I'll go. Their relief was palpable, their smiles too quick, too bright. They thought they'd won. They thought I'd surrendered. They didn't know I'd learned long ago to pick my battles carefully, to wait for the right moment to strike. They didn't know about the letter I'd received 2 months ago, sealed in an envelope with my sister Catherine's elegant handwriting. They didn't know about the $7 million she'd left me, or the words she'd written that burned in my mind like a prophecy. You're the only real family I ever had, Ellie. Take this money and do something that matters. Don't let them push you around. Catherine had seen it coming. She'd seen the signs. Their gradual withdrawal, the impatience in their voices when I called, the way they treated me like a problem to be solved. She'd begged me to stand up for myself, but I'd clung to hope, believing my children would come to their senses. Now, as I watched them leave my home without a backward glance, their cars disappearing down the driveway, I realized she'd been right. Hope wasn't enough. Not anymore. I stood in the doorway, the evening air cool against my skin, and felt a spark ignite deep within me. It wasn't anger, not yet, but something sharper, more dangerous. Resolve. They thought they could discard me, erase me from their lives like an outdated piece of furniture. They thought they knew me, the quiet, accommodating mother who'd always put them first. But they'd forgotten who I was. They'd forgotten what I was capable of. In the silence of my empty house, I walked to the desk in my study, where Catherine's letter lay hidden in a locked drawer. I opened it, tracing her words with my finger. Don't let them push you around. I wouldn't. Not anymore. I had 7 million, a lifetime of sacrifice, and a fire in my chest that refused to be extinguished. They wanted to control my future? Fine. I'd rewrite it myself. But I wouldn't tell them. Not yet. Let them think they'd won. Let them believe I was the frail, helpless mother they'd sentenced to a sterile room. Let them drive away, smug in their victory, unaware of the storm gathering in my heart. I closed the letter, locked the drawer, and began to plan. The roses outside were still bleeding, their petals falling like drops of blood in the fading light. But as I looked at them, I saw something else. Not weakness, but resilience. Thorns hidden beneath beauty, ready to draw blood if crossed. I was those roses. And my children, my ungrateful, oblivious children, were about to learn what it meant to underestimate me. The air at Sunny Meadows smelled like surrender. It wasn't just the sharp tang of industrial disinfectant, or the faint, cloying scent of overcooked vegetables that clung to every surface. It was something deeper, something that seeped into the walls and settled into the bones of the residents. A resignation, a quiet acceptance of being forgotten. As I stood in the doorway of my new apartment, a single room with a narrow bed, a chipped nightstand, and a window overlooking a cracked asphalt parking lot, I felt that surrender clawing at me, trying to claim me. But I wouldn't let it. Not yet. They'd moved me in 2 weeks ago. My children, Sarah, Michael, and Jessica, efficient as executioners. They'd arrived with movers and boxes, their faces a mask of forced cheer as they sorted through my life like scavengers at a yard sale. "This can come with you," Sarah had said, holding up a single framed photo of my grandchildren. "This will have to go," Michael had muttered, gesturing at the piano I'd played every evening since my marriage. The piano where I'd taught Jessica her first notes, where I'd composed lullabies to calm Michael's nightmares, where I'd found solace after their father left. Gone, they said. Donated. As if my memories could be discarded so easily. I'd said little during those 2 weeks, nodding as they packed my life into 3 boxes and 2 suitcases. 67 years reduced to a van's worth of belongings. Inside, though, I was burning. Each photograph they tossed, each heirloom they marked for donation, fueled a fire I hadn't known I could still feel. They thought they were dismantling my past. They didn't know they were forging my future. That first night at Sunny Meadows, after they'd left me in this sterile cage, I sat on the edge of the bed and allowed myself exactly 10 minutes to cry. 10 minutes to mourn the home I'd lost, the children who'd abandoned me, the life I'd thought I'd earned. Then I stood, dried my eyes, and opened the locked case I'd insisted on carrying myself. Inside was Catherine's letter, her words a lifeline in the dark. "Take this money and do something that matters. Don't let them push you around." $7 million. A fortune they didn't know I had. A secret I cradled like a weapon. The days that followed were a study in survival. Sunny Meadows was a place designed to erase individuality. The walls were painted a sickly yellow, like the color of regret. The fluorescent lights buzzed incessantly, a reminder that silence was a luxury we weren't afforded. The staff, though kind, moved with the weary gait of people stretched too thin, their smiles strained as they juggled too many residents, too many tasks. Breakfast at 7, activities at 10, lunch at noon, dinner at 5:30. A schedule as rigid as the bars on a cell. I learned the routine quickly, blending in, observing, listening. I was a ghost among ghosts, but unlike the others, I had a purpose. The residents were my first revelation. Margaret, in the room next to mine, was a soft-spoken woman with eyes that held a lifetime of stories. She'd been here 3 months, left by her daughters after a fall in her shower. They said they'd visit, she told me one morning over watery oatmeal, her voice trembling with hope she didn't believe. But they're so busy, you know. I nodded, my heart twisting. Harold, across the hall, was a former carpenter with hands gnarled by years of work. His son had promised weekly visits, but 6 months later, Harold still sat by the front window every Sunday, waiting for a car that never came. Their stories were different, but the pattern was the same. Children who'd decided their parents were burdens, families who'd convinced themselves that love could be outsourced to a facility like this. I participated in the activities they offered, though my heart wasn't in them. Bingo on Mondays, with cards so worn the numbers were fading. Crafts on Tuesdays, where we glued popsicle sticks into shapes no one cared about. Exercise class on Wednesdays, a series of seated stretches that felt more like a mockery of vitality than a path to it. The staff tried. Maria, a nurse with 4 children at home, always lingered to ask how I was. Robert, a nursing assistant studying for his RN, slipped me extra cookies at dinner, but they were drowning in an understaffed system, their kindness stretched to breaking. At night, I lay in my narrow bed, the hum of the building a constant companion, and thought about Catherine's money. $7 million, sitting in a bank account I hadn't touched. 7 million reasons to fight back. Catherine had been a biochemist, a woman who'd turned her mind into a fortune through sheer brilliance. She'd never married, never had children, and in her final days, she'd seen what I refused to. My children were pulling away, preparing to discard me. Her will had been explicit, her letter a call to arms. You're the only real family I ever had, Ellie. Don't let them push you around. I hadn't listened then. Too stubborn, too hopeful. Now, in this institutional purgatory, I heard her voice as clearly as if she were beside me. By the end of the first week, I knew I couldn't stay a passive resident, fading into the yellow walls. I had to act. But how? The answer came on a Thursday morning when I asked Maria about using the computer in the common room. Just to look at some things, I said vaguely, my voice soft, unthreatening. She smiled, assuming I wanted to check email or browse recipes. She didn't know I was hunting. The computer was ancient, its keys sticky from years of use. But it was enough. I started with Sunny Meadows itself, digging into its ownership, its finances, its secrets. What I found was a revelation wrapped in neglect. Sunny Meadows was part of a small chain of 3 facilities owned by Golden Years Holdings, a company teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. They'd expanded too quickly, taking on loans they couldn't repay, and now their creditors were circling like vultures. The staff turnover rate was abysmal. Nurses and aides quit faster than they could be hired, unable to survive on the meager wages. Complaints filed with the state painted a grim picture. Understaffing, outdated equipment, ignored maintenance requests. Sunny Meadows wasn't a home, it was a sinking ship. I leaned back in the creaky chair, my mind racing. Golden Years. Holdings was desperate. Desperate enough to sell, desperate enough to accept a cash offer from an anonymous buyer. The thought sent a thrill through me, sharp and unfamiliar. I wasn't just a 73-year-old widow, discarded by her children. I was a woman with resources, with a secret they'd never suspect. I opened a new tab and searched for Bradford and Associates, the best law firm in the city. I'd done my homework in the quiet hours of the night, poring over Catherine's financial records, her contacts, her world. James Bradford, a lawyer with a reputation for discretion, was my next step. I made the call from the common room phone, my voice low, my words careful. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Bradford about acquiring a business," I told the receptionist, my heart pounding. She didn't ask questions, didn't hesitate. Within minutes, I was scheduled for a meeting the following week, under the pretense of a doctor's appointment. I hung up, my hands trembling, not with fear but with possibility. The fire inside me was growing, its flames licking at the edges of my grief. As I walked back to my room, I passed Margaret in the hallway, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Any visitors today?" I asked gently. She shook her head, a small, defeated gesture. "Maybe next week," she said, but we both knew it was a lie. I squeezed her hand, a silent promise forming in my chest. This place, this warehouse of forgotten souls, would change. I would make it change. That night, I sat at the small desk in my room, a single lamp casting shadows on the walls. I pulled out a notebook I'd hidden beneath my clothes, its pages already filling with observations. The broken ceiling tiles, the flickering lights, the way Maria's shoulders sagged after a double shift. I wrote down names: Margaret, Harold, Maria, Robert. Each one a reminder that I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for them, for every person this place had failed. And I wrote down another name, Sunny Meadows, a name that mocked its own reality. But not for long. I thought of my children, their faces as they'd left me here, their cars fading into the distance. Sarah had visited once since, staying exactly 37 minutes, her phone buzzing the entire time. Michael had called twice, asking how I was adjusting, as if I were a child learning to tie her shoes. Jessica had sent flowers, a gaudy arrangement with a card that read, "Thinking of you, XXO. Thinking of me, but not enough to show up. Not enough to care." I closed the notebook, my fingers tracing its cover. They thought they'd written the end of my story, consigning me to this place where time stood still. They thought they knew me, Eleanor Campbell, the mother who'd always sacrificed, always forgiven. But they didn't know about the money. They didn't know about the letter. And they didn't know about the woman I was becoming. Outside, the parking lot was empty, the asphalt glowing faintly under the moonlight. I imagined their cars pulling in again, their confident strides as they came to check on their problem mother. Let them come. Let them see the sterile room they'd chosen for me. Let them believe they'd won. Because in the shadows, where they couldn't see, I was building something. A plan. A rebellion. A reckoning. I turned off the lamp, plunging the room into darkness, and whispered to myself, to Catherine, to the future I was about to seize. This is only the beginning. The rain was relentless that October morning, hammering against the tinted windows of Bradford and Associates as I sat across from James Bradford in his mahogany-paneled office. The city skyline loomed beyond the glass, a gray blur of ambition and steel, but my focus was sharper than ever. My hands, steady now despite their age, rested on the leather folder I'd brought with me, a folder containing the blueprint of my rebellion. Inside it was Catherine's letter, a single page of her elegant script, and a financial statement that held the weight of $7 million. My secret, my power. James Bradford, a man with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing, leaned back in his chair, studying me. I'd chosen him carefully, not just for his reputation as a discreet lawyer, but for the faint glint of defiance in his demeanor, a hint that he understood battles fought in the shadows. Mrs. Campbell, he said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. You're proposing something unconventional. Acquiring 3 assisted living facilities, including Sunny Meadows, is no small feat. Golden Years Holdings is desperate, but they'll still ask questions about the buyer. Then don't tell them it's me, I said, my voice low but firm. Use a shell company. Keep my name out of it until the ink is dry. He raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement crossing his face. You've thought this through. I've had nothing but time to think, I replied, and the truth of it burned in my chest. Weeks at Sunny Meadows, surrounded by yellow walls and forgotten faces, had honed my resolve into something unbreakable. I'd spent nights poring over the facility's records, piecing together its decay, unpaid bills, neglected repairs, a staff stretched so thin they could barely breathe. Golden Years. Holdings was a house of cards, and I was about to topple it. Bradford nodded, sliding a contract across the desk. The board is eager to unload their liabilities. They're asking $5.2 million for all 3 facilities, Sunny Meadows and the 2 smaller ones in neighboring counties. A fire sale, frankly, given their debts. With your resources, it's feasible. But why? Most people don't buy failing businesses out of sentiment. I met his gaze, letting the silence stretch just long enough to unsettle him. It's not sentiment, I said at last. It's justice. He didn't press further, and I didn't elaborate. He didn't need to know about my children, Sarah, Michael, and Jessica, and their betrayal, how they'd sentenced me to a place they thought would erase me. He didn't need to know about the nights I'd lain awake, hearing Margaret's soft sobs through the thin walls, or Harold's quiet vigil by the window, waiting for a son who never came. He didn't need to know about the fire in my chest, the one Catherine's letter had ignited. All he needed to know was that I had the money and the will to see this through. We finalized the details that day. The purchase would be anonymous, funneled through a holding company called Phoenix Enterprises, a name I chose for its promise of rebirth. The deal would close in 10 days, giving me just enough time to prepare. As I left Bradford's office, the rain still falling in sheets, I felt a shift inside me. I wasn't just Eleanor Campbell, the discarded mother. I was a force, a shadow moving unseen, ready to rewrite the rules. Back at Sunny Meadows, I played my part flawlessly. To the staff, I was the quiet new resident in room 214, always polite, always unassuming. I joined the bingo games, smiled at Maria's tired jokes, and listened to Harold's stories about his woodworking days. But beneath the surface, I was a general marshalling her forces. I kept my notebook hidden, its pages now thick with notes, broken pipes in the east wing, flickering lights in the dining hall, a heating system that rattled like a dying beast. Every detail was a weapon, a piece of the puzzle I was assembling. The staff began to notice changes before they knew why. One morning, a maintenance crew arrived unannounced, replacing the cracked tiles in the common room. The next day, new lighting fixtures appeared in the hallways, banishing the dim, oppressive glow. Maria whispered to Robert that corporate must have found new funding, but I saw the confusion in their eyes. They didn't know the orders came from me, relayed through Bradford's office under the guise of Phoenix Enterprises. I wasn't ready to reveal myself. Not yet. The real test came with the policy change. I'd spent hours with Bradford crafting it, a rule so simple yet so radical. It would shake the foundation of this place. Starting November 1st, all families would be required to visit their loved ones at least twice a week, for a minimum of 1 hour each visit. Failure to comply would restrict their access to Sundays from 2 to 4 p.m., a narrow window that would force them to confront their neglect. The policy would apply to every resident, no exceptions. including my children. I gave Bradford the green light to send the letter, printed on Phoenix Enterprises letterhead, to every family with a relative at Sunny Meadows. I imagined Sarah's face when she opened it, her lawyer's mind dissecting the formal language, searching for loopholes. I pictured Michael's frown, his practical nature bristling at the inconvenience. Jessica, ever the optimist, would probably laugh it off, assuming it wouldn't affect her. They had no idea I was behind it, that the mother they'd dismissed was pulling the strings. The letter went out on a Friday, and by Monday, the ripples began. Families called the front desk, some confused, some outraged. "Twice a week?" one woman shouted, her voice echoing through the reception area as I lingered nearby, pretending to read a magazine. "I have a job, kids, a life. You can't enforce this." But the policy was airtight, backed by the new ownership's authority, my authority. I overheard Maria explaining it patiently, her voice tinged with hope. "It's for the residents' well-being," she said. "They deserve to see their families." The residents felt it too. Margaret's eyes lit up when her daughter called, promising a visit on Wednesday. Harold sat by the window with a new kind of anticipation, his hands less restless. The air at Sunny Meadows began to shift, as if the building itself was waking from a long sleep. But my children, they were silent. No calls, no visits, no flowers. Just a single text from Sarah. "Mom, did you get that weird letter about visiting hours? I'll handle it." Handle it. As if I were a problem to be solved, a contract to be negotiated. I stared at the text, my thumb hovering over the reply button, but I didn't respond. Let her think she could handle it. Let her believe she was in control. I was done playing their game. The deal closed on a crisp November morning, the paperwork signed in Bradford's office while I sat in a cab across town, my heart pounding with a mix of triumph and dread. Sunny Meadows, along with its sister facilities, was mine. Phoenix Enterprises was no longer a shell. It was a reality, and I was its architect. I gave Bradford a list of immediate changes: increase staff salaries by 20%, hire 10 new nurses and aides, replace the outdated medical equipment, and install a garden in the courtyard, a nod to the roses I'd left behind. I wanted Sunny Meadows to be a place of life, not limbo. Back at the facility, I watched the changes unfold from the shadows. The new lights cast a warm glow over the dining hall, where residents laughed over fresh fruit instead of canned peaches. The staff moved with a new energy, their smiles less strained, their shifts no longer punishing. Maria told me one evening, her eyes bright, "I don't know who's behind this, but they're saving this place." I smiled, my secret a weight I carried willingly. "Maybe it's someone who cares," I said softly, and she nodded, not suspecting the truth. But the policy was my true gambit. By the end of the first week, I saw its impact. Families who'd visited once a month, if that, began showing up, their faces a mix of guilt and obligation. Margaret's daughter brought her grandchildren, and the sound of their laughter filled the hallway. Harold's son arrived on a Thursday, awkward but present, and I watched from a distance as Harold's hands steadied, his smile genuine for the first time in months. The policy wasn't just a rule. It was a mirror, forcing families to see what they'd ignored. My children, though, resisted. Sarah sent another text, this time sharper. "This new policy is ridiculous. I'm talking to the director." Michael called the front desk, demanding an exemption because of his work schedule. Jessica sent another bouquet, this one with a card that read, "Miss you, Mom. Talk soon." as if flowers could replace her presence. I didn't respond to any of them. I wanted them to feel the weight of their choices, to understand what it meant to abandon someone they claimed to love. Then came the first hint of suspicion. Sarah, ever the investigator, called me one evening, her voice tight with frustration. "Mom, have you heard anything about this Phoenix Enterprises? They're the ones who bought Sunny Meadows. I looked them up, and it's like they came out of nowhere." I leaned against the wall in my room, the phone pressed to my ear, my heart steady. "Phoenix Enterprises?" I said, feigning confusion. "Why would I know anything about that, dear?" "There's something off about this," she pressed. "The timing, the policy, it's too convenient, and the director won't tell me anything." "Maybe they just want what's best for us," I said, my voice soft but laced with steel. "Maybe they're tired of seeing people forgotten." She paused, and I could almost hear her mind racing, piecing together a puzzle she didn't yet understand. "I'm going to find out who's behind this," she said finally, and hung up. I set the phone down, a smile curling my lips. Let her dig. Let her chase shadows. She'd find me eventually, but not before I was ready. Not before I'd reshaped this place into something worthy of the people it housed. Not before I'd shown them all, my children, the staff, the residents, what I was capable of. The days turned into weeks, and Sunny Meadows began to transform. The garden took shape in the courtyard, roses and lavender blooming where asphalt had once cracked. The dining hall served meals that smelled like home, not a hospital. The staff, bolstered by new hires, had time to sit with residents, to listen, to care. I watched it all from my quiet corner, my notebook now filled with plans for the future. A library for Margaret's books, a workshop for Harold's woodworking, a counseling room for families to mend what was broken. But the fire in my chest wasn't just for them. It was for me. For the woman I'd been before my children decided I was a burden. For the mother who'd given everything, only to be discarded. For the sister Catherine had believed in, the one she'd entrusted with a fortune and a mission. I wasn't just saving Sunny Meadows. I was saving myself. One evening, as I sat in the courtyard, the scent of roses heavy in the air, I overheard two staff members whispering. "Whoever's running Phoenix Enterprises," Robert said, "they're not just throwing money around. They know this place. They know what it needs." "Maybe it's one of us," Maria replied, half joking. "Someone who's been here, seen it all." I turned away, hiding my smile. They were closer to the truth than they knew, but I wasn't ready to step into the light. Not yet. My children were circling, their suspicion growing, their visits still absent. They thought they could outsmart me, outmaneuver me. They thought they knew the game. They didn't know I'd already changed the rules. The air in the dining hall was thick with the scent of roasted chicken and anticipation. It was mid-November, and Sunny Meadows was alive in a way it hadn't been when I arrived. The new lights cast a golden glow over the tables, where residents laughed over fresh meals, their voices mingling with the clink of silverware. Margaret sat across from me, her eyes brighter than I had ever seen, recounting a visit from her grandchildren. Harold, at the next table, was showing Robert a sketch of a birdhouse he planned to build in the new workshop. The changes I had orchestrated, through Phoenix Enterprises, through my secret, were breathing life into this place. But beneath my calm exterior, a storm was brewing. My children were coming, and tonight, the masks would fall. Sarah had called 3 days ago, her voice sharp as a blade. "Mom, we need to talk. In person. This policy nonsense has gone too far." Michael had followed with a gruff voicemail demanding a meeting with the director. Jessica, predictably, sent a text. "Mom, what's going on at Sunny Meadows? It's like a different place. Can we visit soon?" Their words were a chorus of suspicion, their egos bruised by the new rules they couldn't bend. They thought they could storm in, intimidate, negotiate, and reclaim control. They didn't know I'd been waiting for this moment since the day they left me here. I'd planned every detail. The meeting was set for 7 p.m. in the director's office, a small room I'd had repainted and furnished with a sturdy oak desk and chairs that spoke of authority. Nancy, the director, was my unwitting ally, briefed only on the basics. Phoenix Enterprises wanted to discuss the new policy with concerned families. She didn't know I was the one pulling the strings, didn't know the woman she called Ellie in room 214 was the owner of the facility she managed. I'd instructed Bradford to be present, his presence a silent signal of the power shift to come. The stage was set, and I was ready to step into the spotlight. As I dressed for the meeting, I chose my armor carefully. A navy dress I hadn't worn in years, its fabric soft but commanding, and a silver brooch Catherine had given me, shaped like a phoenix rising from flames. I looked in the mirror, my reflection no longer the frail mother my children imagined. My eyes were sharp, my shoulders squared. I was Eleanor Campbell, not their mom to be managed, but a woman who'd reclaimed her life. I tucked Catherine's letter into my pocket, its weight a reminder of why I was doing this. Not for revenge, though the temptation burned. For justice. For Margaret, Harold, and every resident who'd been forgotten. For the woman I'd forgotten I could be. At 6:55 p.m., I sat in the dining hall, sipping tea, watching the front entrance through the glass doors. Sarah arrived first, her heels clicking with purpose. Her tailored coat a stark contrast to the warmth of the renovated hall. Michael followed, his work boots leaving faint mud tracks, his face set in a scowl. Jessica was last, her red scarf a splash of color, her smile faltering as she scanned the room and didn't find me. They didn't know I was watching, didn't know I'd orchestrated this moment like a conductor leading a symphony to its crescendo. Nancy greeted them at the reception desk, her voice calm but firm. "Mrs. Campbell asked me to bring you to the director's office. She'll join us shortly." I saw Sarah's head snap up at my name, her eyes narrowing. She thought I was just another complainant, another obstacle to bulldoze. Let her think that. Let them all think that. I waited 5 minutes, giving them time to stew, to whisper their theories about Phoenix Enterprises and the unreasonable policy. Then I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked to the office. The hallway felt longer than usual, each step a heartbeat, each breath a vow. I paused outside the door, hearing their voices. Sarah's clipped demands, Michael's gruff interruptions, Jessica's nervous chatter. I closed my eyes, summoning Catherine's words. "Don't let them push you around." I wouldn't. Not anymore. I opened the door and stepped inside. The room fell silent, their eyes locking onto me. Sarah's mouth tightened, Michael's brows furrowed, and Jessica's smile froze. Nancy stood, gesturing to a chair. "Mrs. Campbell, thank you for joining us. This is Mr. Bradford from Phoenix Enterprises." Bradford nodded, his expression unreadable, but I caught the flicker of respect in his eyes. He knew what was coming. I took my seat, not the one Nancy offered, but the one at the head of the table, behind the desk. The move was deliberate, a silent claim of authority. Sarah's eyes narrowed further, sensing something was off, but not yet grasping the truth. "Mom," Sarah began, her voice laced with impatience. "We're here to discuss this absurd visiting policy. It's impractical. I have clients. Michael has his shops. Jessica's swamped with her startup. We can't be here twice a week. Michael leaned forward, his hands clasped. Yeah. And I talked to the director, Nancy, right? And she said it's non-negotiable. Who's running this place now? This Phoenix Enterprises? I want to speak to them. Jessica, ever the peacemaker, chimed in. Mom, we just want what's best for you, but this policy feels personal, like someone's trying to punish us. I let their words hang in the air, my face a mask of calm. Inside, my heart pounded, not with fear, but with the thrill of the moment I'd been building toward. I glanced at Bradford, who gave a subtle nod, then turned to Nancy. Thank you, Nancy. Could you give us the room, please? Nancy hesitated, confused, but complied, closing the door behind her. The silence was deafening, the air charged with their unease. I leaned back in my chair, my hands folded, and let my gaze sweep over them, my children, my betrayers, my unwitting pawns. Sarah, I said, my voice steady. You're right. The policy is impractical for people who don't prioritize their family. Michael, you want to speak to Phoenix Enterprises? You're doing that right now. And Jessica, you think this feels personal? It is. Their confusion was palpable, their eyes darting between me and Bradford. Sarah recovered first, her lawyer's instincts kicking in. Mom, what are you talking about? You're not making sense. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Catherine's letter, placing it on the desk like a card in a high-stakes game. I'm talking about the fact that I own Sunny Meadows. I own all 3 facilities under Golden Years Holdings. Phoenix Enterprises is mine. The policy, the renovations, the new staff, all of it. I did it. The room seemed to contract, their breaths catching in unison. Sarah's face paled, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Michael's jaw dropped, his eyes wide with disbelief. Jessica let out a nervous laugh, as if waiting for the punchline. But there was no punchline. Only the truth I'd held in my chest for months. That's impossible, Sarah said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. You don't have that kind of money. You're a retired seamstress. I smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of my lips. Am I? Or is that just what you chose to see? You never asked about my life, Sarah. You never asked about Catherine. I slid the letter across the desk, watching their eyes follow it. Your aunt left me $7 million when she passed. She saw what you were doing, pulling away, planning to lock me away here. She left me the means to fight back. And I did. Michael shook his head, his voice rough. You're saying you bought this place? Just to… what? Trap us with this visiting policy? That's insane, Mom. Not to trap you, I said, my voice cutting through his protest. To wake you up, to make you see what you've done, not just to me, but to every person here who waits for a visit that never comes. Margaret, Harold, all of them. You left me here to fade away, to be forgotten, but I'm not fading, I'm rebuilding. Jessica's eyes filled with tears, her voice small. Mom, we didn't mean to hurt you. We thought this was the best place for you. The best place? I repeated, my tone sharp enough to make her flinch. You chose this place because it was convenient for you. You sold my home, our home, without asking me. You decided I was a burden, a problem to be solved. Did you ever once ask what I wanted? Silence. Their guilt was a living thing, heavy and undeniable. Sarah tried to speak, but her words faltered. We thought we were protecting you. Protecting me. I stood, my hands braced on the desk, my voice rising. You protected yourselves from the inconvenience of a mother who raised you, who sacrificed everything for you. You thought you could erase me, but you forgot who I am. I'm not just your mother. I'm Eleanor Campbell, and I'm done being invisible. Bradford cleared his throat, breaking the tension. Mrs. Campbell is the sole owner of Phoenix Enterprises. The acquisition was finalized 2 weeks ago. The visiting policy is legally enforceable, and it applies to every family, including yours. Mrs. Campbell has also implemented significant improvements to the facilities, funded entirely by her resources. Sarah's eyes flashed, her lawyer's mind grasping for control. This is manipulation. You're using your money to punish us. No, I said, my voice softening but no less firm. I'm using my money to save this place, to give people like Margaret and Harold the dignity you denied me. The policy isn't about punishment. It's about accountability. If you love me, as you claim, then show it. Show up. Be here. Not because I'm forcing you, but because I'm worth it. Jessica was crying openly now, her hands covering her face. Michael stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped. Sarah, though, held my gaze, her jaw tight. You hid this from us, she said, almost a whisper. You let us think you were helpless. I let you think what you already believed, I corrected. You decided I was helpless long before I came here. You decided I was done living, but I'm not, and I never will be. I picked up Catherine's letter, holding it up. Your aunt saw it coming. She warned me you'd try to control me, to push me aside. She gave me the means to fight back, but I didn't want to fight you. I wanted you to choose me, to choose family, but you didn't. So I chose myself. The room was silent, the weight of my words settling over them like ash. I could see it in their faces, the shock, the guilt, the dawning realization that they'd underestimated me. Sarah's hands trembled, Michael's fists unclenched, and Jessica's sobs quieted. They were seeing me, perhaps for the first time, not as their mother, but as a woman with power, with purpose, with a fire they couldn't extinguish. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, I said, my voice steady. I'm asking you to do better, for me, for the people here, for yourselves. You can leave now. Think about what I've said. Think about what you've done. And decide who you want to be. I turned and walked out, leaving them with Bradford, with the letter, with the truth. The hallway was cool against my flushed skin, the roses in the courtyard visible through the window, their petals glowing under the moonlight. I felt lighter, as if I had shed a weight I'd carried for years. They knew now. They knew who I was. But this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new, a reckoning not just for them, but for me. I'd stepped out of the shadows, and there was no going back.